Good morning, good evening, depending where you are in the world. For me, it's in the morning. For Gaylene, it's in the evening in New Zealand. And as you know, I'm Penny Kroll from Meta Consciousness, and I'm a trainer of matrix reimprinting and EFT and playing in the matrix with serious disease. And I'm so delighted today to speak to Gaylene Hansen. And Gaylene is, I'm so humbled that I met this beautiful lady. What's that? Raising eyebrows. We can all see you.
I know.
Because don't you love people, their little behavioral antics that they get up to? Gaylene is, Gaylene, I'm not even getting your name right here. Gaylene is an excellent nurse. She has so many years in the medical background. And well, I'm going to actually ask you, Gaylene, because you're the expert on yourself, like we all are. But how did you manage to get here? What was the road that brought you to this vocation of life?
Well, I always wanted to be a nurse since I was about 5 years old, and went to my schooling, my nursing training, and then trained in midwifery because I always knew I wanted to do that too. I always knew I wanted to work with babies at some stage as well, but I worked in different areas as well. So I worked in intensive care, coronary care for quite a few years, and in emergency department, teaching nurses. But my main area is 23 years of working with neonates and their families within special care baby unit and within earlier some bigger intensive care units for neonates and families. Yeah.
And for those of you that have never heard of the word neonates, can you expand on that?
This is a baby in their first month of life, and first 4 weeks, and they're still a neonate whether they were born premature or things. Obviously, if a baby is born early, then in that time period is growing up to the stage when they would have been born, and then afterwards, it's and they all have very unique journeys.
Beautiful. Yeah. And so, what brought you particularly to working with that? I mean, I would imagine even in the medical society, it's quite a small niche. It's a specialization of.
Yes. Well, 8 years ago, a bit over 8 years ago, I had a wake-up call, and it opened a most amazing door. Basically, when we're not listening to ourselves, our body gets a bit louder and louder, and then it says, I'm just going to shut you down until you start paying attention. So mine wasn't too bad, but I did have 3 months off work, and there's a bit of confusion in that first time, in that time going, what's going on? And I learnt of body talk, and that was my first experience, and it just blew my mind, really. It was like, whoa, what was that? What just happened in this session? And I started looking after that. I had several body talk sessions, got myself back into work. And then I started looking and did a body talk access day. And then I went and learnt Reiki and meditation, and it was about nearly 2 years in that time when I was looking and searching, basically waking up. There was a Meta Health Summit, and I learnt of that, and it's like, I just want to do this. So I started training online, and then with that, then we had a basic practitioner and went on to a master practitioner, so it was online for a year. And I was just so excited with this. It did take me a while bridging my my Western and Eastern knowledge in there. For a while there, it was hard to kind of like sometimes to speak about it. Now I don't have any problem with that with really anybody now. But it's building that confidence, and over the years, so that was in 2014. And I discovered EFT in there. And then on a swap session, we did a lot of swaps, as we all have to work on our own stuff in every course that we do. And a colleague was online, used Matrix, and I was like, what was that? And I did my matrix training with you, Penny, and I always knew I was going into birth reimprinting as well. And so, yes, I went over to Australia from New Zealand for that one. And yeah, I've learned a bit more about in other areas of the tapping and past life reimprinting. And it's kind of moved from there, really. Yeah.
How beautiful. And I'm very curious, Darling, that you said that you found it quite difficult between the Western and Eastern. And it's really interesting, isn't it, from a meta perspective, that a German doctor actually created this.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a doctor, and yet still we are. Do you think we're so conditioned that we're taught so much? Or is this a more epigenetic through generations? Because you work with babies.
Yes.
Where does the conditioning come from in your perspective about our bodies?
Well, that's kind of been handed down to us in many things since we were very young, especially like, as we know, in that first few years of our life, that we're, that sort of programming really. And yeah, I mean, it is interesting that I'm following this path and still working within a hospital, but I'm working in the area that I can be true to myself. Yeah, and I actually love connecting now, bridging the two, the two areas, and adding that wisdom to why does our body do what it does? It's innate. I look at a newborn baby and I see, like in this brand new baby, and if premature, even smaller, is that this little being was created in this number of weeks, and how perfect they are. And how could anyone ever think the body could do something wrong?
Yeah.
When it can do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you, working with these little ones, how do you actually go about working with these little? This is the main question that I think dumbfounds a lot of people, and they're curious. Well, they don't speak. And you and I know, yes.
They have many, many signs and signals that they can tell us about. I had recently, last May, which I was all incorporating already, but there's a training called newborn behavioural observations. And that is actually a training in 18 different observations that it's actually designed to help practitioners to guide parents in what their baby can do, their uniqueness of the baby, their competencies. It gives the baby a voice, individuality. For example, there's like, they'll use the way they use their hands in their body, and premature babies will go like this. I think it's brilliant. If we all managed to do this for somebody and was a universal language, we would be telling someone, back off, I'm not ready. If we looked at the traffic light signals that babies will teach us, green, it's all go, we're safe, this is all right, I'm safe, I'm ready to engage. If they're amber, I'm not quite sure. And as the eyes kind of wander off, or you get subtle skin tone changes in the baby, the breathing will change. Same as adults, actually, same as the rest of us. They'll give us signals. And red, it's like, whoa, not now. Yeah. The crying or the total avoidance that I'm overwhelmed, I'm in overload, stop, So when we learn those signals from babies, they teach us huge lessons for adults in any age group. And if you're working with a parent, then when they see what their little one can show them, when they are ready to engage or not engage, you can work with the strengths of their baby. You can stop and wait and just hold them. And my passion is getting them skin to skin, on their mother, especially on their father, and especially their mother, because there's a huge amount of benefits in this. They will teach their mother and their father, and they'll show them where they need more support. So it's supporting them through, what do I need right now? What does the baby need right now to help them to engage, or what, you know, just to even have a rest time. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So it's looking at the signals and their states of alertness, drowsiness, sleep, deep sleep. And that's the area that I loved. I quickly recognized on that training how working in when we go back with someone to a traumatic event, because that's my niche, is, would you like me to mention that before I go into that? Okay. So as a neonatal nurse, it's to provide neonatal special care for babies and their families, family integrated care. Parents can do virtually everything for their little ones. You know, in my niche, I called my business Nurturing Naturally, NZ. It's the experience of each, and each is individual, each in utero experience, if they're sick, if they're premature, and if they're well. It's the experience of their mother, their father, and the family, and a connection of this little one with their family, and especially with their mother. They're wired like the amniotic fluid inside, when they're inside. The area around the breast smells the same to a newborn baby as what it did in utero. So if a baby comes out and then they know that smell, if they come up onto mum's chest, they've got it again. First home is in the uterus, second home is right here. So if there's the connection of that mum and baby, and if there is something that's gone on that's been traumatic, and that's the perception of the baby and the mother, it's their story, what did they make it mean? What belief did they get out of that in these different moments that we have? And how can we support that little one, both in now, well, it's all now, and if we're going back into the matrix, how we can support that little one to make sense out of what they experienced, and then how can they look at that and learn from that. And in matrix reimprinting, we can go back to that little one. If it might be your own baby in utero, it might be you in utero. You know, it's we can go back to both, and you don't have to relive those experiences because the way it's done, because it's so gentle process. But we can ask that little younger self, what did you need? Yeah. What did you need to know? What did you need to have? What did you need to do? And as with those of us who work in this area, as you well know, they are incredibly inventive on what they actually needed, and they know.
Yeah.
And the strategy then. Yeah, they know. Yeah. So as a practitioner, you hold space for people to go back gently and safely. You know, we have like 10% of babies are born premature and need intensive care. So many stories in there. And what did they experience? And when we take them back, what if we put them back on skin to skin? What if we do this in the first instance? Yeah. And keep them on skin to skin. There's movements through movement as in learning now of, let's take this modern neonatal care back now, where babies, things are done on mum, on their father, or somebody that's there on skin to skin with. Procedures are done there where they feel safe. Yeah. We can do that in the matrix. We can put them back.
It's all about safety, isn't it? As mammals, we're all about safety.
Yeah. Are we safe or unsafe? You know, we're analysing, we're looking at, not judging, we're looking at that all the time. Safe or unsafe? Yeah. Do I want to engage or not? And when you can connect back in the first instance, you know, with a newborn baby in the neonatal unit, or through matrix, that connection with having, again, especially like with their mother. And this is where the newborn behavioural things, this observations, I've worked with people where I guide them back to maybe mum didn't connect very well with them, but if you've got a loving, they might have angel nurse or whoever the baby decides they want, and we can hold them and connect them and let mum watch, let them show mum what they can do, because a lot of parents are very amazed at what their newborn baby can show them.
And it's not just the babies, is it? It's the trauma
It's
for mom as well and the rest of
yes,
the family, which I
yes,
love that you're
yes,
integrating the whole little community there.
yes.
And do
It's
you
the
have
family
any,
as well.
yeah, do you have
Mm.
any stories to share on this? Because the work that you do is just so wonderful.
Um, would you like just the first one of my own of
Yeah,
why
yeah,
this?
please
Okay,
do.
so
This is so
one of the
fascinating, isn't it?
um, when I went back to my little baby self, and I'd been back to my baby self several times, so she already knew about skin to skin and where she wanted to be. And as far as I'm concerned, when I was born, that's where I was. There was probably some degree of that, but I was born in an age when babies went into nurseries. Mothers stayed in there, and it was the units, maternity units, like 2 weeks, which I think is wonderful in many ways. So when we went back to my little self, she was in a nursery. She was crying in a nursery with other babies, and she wanted her angel nurse to come, or just a guardian angel to come and just put her quiet hands around her. She didn't want her to pick her up, but this is what I do with babies in the unit and teach parents. Quiet, still hands around their baby. Their baby will feel their energy. So she had her angel nurse, and then she wanted her daddy to come and pick her up and put her back on skin to skin. So we did that. She was back on skin to skin. But for her, it wasn't enough. She wanted all the other daddies to go back to that nursery and get all those babies and put them on skin to skin as well, back on their mother. And after that, like when I went back and was looking at it over the next two weeks, sort of checking there, kind of like a reimprinting it again. 2 weeks, there was fine. There was no babies in that nursery. And 2 weeks later, there was a baby in the nursery. And my first impulse was like, put that baby, get baby back onto skin. Yeah, that's fine, back onto skin. And then I was going to put a bolt on the door, and it was like, no, make this a beautiful place. Make this a room where other children can come in, families can come in and create that. So that's what was created in that room.
Beautiful. And do you
Yeah.
think that was, and I know that some viewers may be laughing at my next question, but do you think that was the day that you made the decision to go forward and do the beautiful career and work that you're doing now?
I feel like it's always been there. It has all the way through. Like becoming a nurse, you needed to become in then before you could become a midwife. And yeah,
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 wonderful.
yeah.
And do you have any stories to share of anybody or a mother or a baby that you've worked with?
I have a couple of ones. These were the mums. And I just want to say, it's the meta consciousness that enabled us to go there quickly into this because of understanding the body and why it does what it does, why a particular organ tissue will respond, and knowing the sides of the body and how they respond. So I worked with a mum who was in her 50s. She's right wired, and her left breast was aching. So immediate my meta consciousness brain goes mother, child, nest, nurturing something side. Okay. The other thing she was getting at around this was she was waking up at night and having difficulty going back to sleep. She was awake for like an hour and a half or so. And I have permission to share these, by the way. Her feelings were around, I can't get out. I'm stuck, despair. And that was a repeating theme. And her mum didn't feed her at nighttime or attend to her at nighttime. She had the idea that, with like the supposed cry it out. So we went into the matrix with this, and my client went back to her little echo, her tiny baby self, who was kicking, screaming, hungry. And then she went into despair and just went quiet. Babies will disassociate. If they don't get what they need, they'll just turn off. So she needed to know her mum, that somebody was there. And the belief that she made was, I'm not important. I don't matter. So we settled her little one. She held her little baby echo. We used EFT. We bought the colour this little one needed. We brought mum in and we taught mum about baby's needs. We created new understanding there. We brought mum into the future, to what we know now. We threw away the old book and we gave her a new one. And she fed her baby, a little echo, in the matrix. So we re-imprinted this beautiful picture. And interestingly, following this, when my client then woke up in the night, she went back in her mind and she breastfed her own tiny baby self.
Oh,
That was the strategy.
Yeah.
She fed and held her, and the amount of time she woke up was like an hour and a half to start with, and it just got less and less. And then it was just a few minutes, because she would each time go back to her baby self, reassure her, and then she would go back to sleep and the baby would go back to sleep and the breast ache was gone.
Isn't it so beautiful? So beautiful.
Mm.
And those early, so many of my clients say, but Penny, I don't have any memory. In fact, the only person I think I've ever come across is on a workshop I did with a medical doctor who'd been retired. And he looked around the room and said, I've been, he also, although he was a local GP, he was in a small village, so he helped people give birth, and everybody knew him in this small village. And he said, I remember exactly my day of birth. And we all looked at him and thought, oh, what? How could you do that? And he said, I remember. And he said, I kept on saying to my mother, but the surgeon had these shiny things over his eyes. And he knew exactly what happened in his birth. Now, I've never met anybody else with that knowledge, but the work that we do can invite us to remember. And
yes,
it's so beautiful when you take people on that journey and they see and they link up to their current challenges.
yes,
Particularly,
yeah.
I was reading an article about premature babies and IVF inceptions, that there's so much 30% higher risk of them becoming emotionally disassociated, as you said, with what the Western world called mental illness. However, we know this is another strategy that we get clumped into. Myself personally, being a C-section baby with, it's making me smile when you were talking about how babies know. My mother used to say to me, Gaylene, you were the best baby because you slept for the first year. How disassociated was I as a baby? And you see these little neonatal ones, them simply just wanting to sleep all the time.
They do sleep a lot, yeah. But when they have the deep sleeps, it's that's the more the relaxing sleep. Yeah, it's the need for they when they settled so much when they're actually on their mother. It's the time that if they needed some breathing support, it's a good time when you put them onto mum and you lift it off, because they stabilize very much on their mother. And it's the same things you can do exactly in the matrix. What you do now, when I can in a special care baby unit, you can do in the matrix.
That's so beautiful.
And I have another example actually too, if you want. Well, this was a mum who had eczema on her breast, and she only had it on each side of the breast where her baby put his hands when he was breastfeeding. Nowhere else on the breast, just on where he's put his hands. So this was her second child. When we went back, she couldn't breastfeed her first child for whatever reason, and a very kind nurse took him away for a little while, and that was her Yuden moment. The Yuden, I mean, it was an unexpected, dramatic. It's isolating, and she didn't have a strategy. what she felt in that time was powerlessness. She couldn't touch her baby. She couldn't care for her baby and feed him as she needed to. And she wasn't able to breastfeed for whatever reason, and whatever supports were or weren't there. This was her second child now. So this is the second child she's got. And that's when he had his hands on her and with the eczema. And it's all around touch, our skin, our outer layer of skin. It's around touch, connection, separation. And in that time when her baby was now able to feed, her skin now was able to go into a restoration phase. We've got the 2 phases. And in the first phase, the skin was just, she wasn't even aware of it. But she was certainly aware of it when it was hot and it was itchy and it was red and the patches were there. And we went back and we found that early moment, and we printed it with the picture that she needed to have then. And the itchiness had gone from 6 to 0 in the session. It was a Skype session, and it just completely resolved within a matter of days afterwards. She waited 2 weeks to tell me, but it had gone away and it never came back because the original trauma had been resolved.
Yeah, and we can do this, and I love the fact that you work online like I do. I mean, you're sitting in New Zealand, I'm sitting in London, and even though that we're so far apart with our clients, they're the ones that are empowering themselves. We're the guide.
Yes.
And with your knowledge, Gaylene, this has just been wonderful. I was going to make this 15 minutes, but I could do this a whole day talking to you because you've got such a wealth of knowledge, and the work that you're doing is so profound and needed. So thank you, Gaylene. And would you just like to share how people can contact you?
I have a website. It's www.nurturingnaturally.nz. I have and on there, there's quite some different blogs. There's ones on nurturing skin to skin. Ones about, actually, one of the more recent ones is from the International Neonatal Conference, which was titled Enriched Family Enhanced Care. There were some beautiful stories that were coming from this. There's other areas on there as well of different blogs. There's also a couple of video webinars that I did with Sharon King, the author of Heal Your Birth, Heal Your Life, and with Sonia Cortis, who it was on birth and neonatal mental health. I have a Facebook page, through email, but the website will pick up where you can contact me. Yeah.
Beautiful, Gaylene. Thank you so much. It's just been wonderful. So I will speak to you soon, darling.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, thank you.